There's a sentence most people have heard at least once in their life. After everything I've done for you, 5 words, no shouting, no threat, no obvious demand. And yet the moment you hear it, something inside you shifts. Your chest tightens, your thoughts slow down, your body goes into defense mode, and almost without deciding to, you start moving away from what you wanted and toward what they want. That is not random. That is not love. That is pressure wearing the face of pain. And it is one of the most effective psychological weapons a human being can use against another. It works for one reason: because you care. Guilt tripping does not work on people because they are weak. It works on people because they have a conscience, because they value loyalty, because they value kindness, because they do not want to hurt people they love. That is exactly why it is so powerful. Real guilt has a purpose. It is the mind's internal alarm system. It activates when you believe you did something wrong, when you crossed one of your own values, when you broke trust, when you caused harm. In healthy relationships, guilt helps repair damage. But in manipulative relationships, that same system gets hijacked. That is where guilt tripping begins. A skilled guilt tripper does not create guilt out of nowhere. They find a value you already have: love, fairness, loyalty, gratitude, responsibility, and they turn it against you. They do not invent the emotion. They amplify it. They redirect it. They weaponize it. And the result is brutal. Because now you are not just defending a decision. You are defending your identity. You are no longer asking, "Do I want to do this?" You are asking, "Am I a bad son? Am I a selfish partner? Am I an ungrateful friend? Am I the problem?" That shift is everything. Because once a conversation stops being about the issue and becomes about your character, most people lose. Think about how guilt trips actually sound.
I guess I just don't matter to you anymore. No, it's okay. I'll handle it. Alone. I sacrificed so much for this family. Forget it. I'm used to being disappointed.
Notice what is happening there. They are not making a clear request. They are not saying what they need directly. They are not asking for a real conversation. They are creating emotional pressure. They are building a psychological atmosphere where your discomfort keeps rising until giving in feels like relief. That is why guilt tripping is so hard to resist in real time. Because it does not feel like control, it feels like pain. And if you care about someone, their pain matters to you. That is the trap. The manipulator puts you in conflict with yourself. On one side, your own needs, your own boundaries, your own exhaustion, your own right to say no. On the other side, the image of yourself as a good person, a caring person, a loyal person, a loving person. And now those two things collide. That tension is unbearable for a lot of people. So they do what most human beings do under internal conflict. They resolve it fast. Not by thinking clearly, by escaping the discomfort. That is why people say yes when they mean no. Apologize when they did nothing wrong. Cancel plans they needed. Take back boundaries they were proud of 5 minutes earlier. Not because they changed their mind, because the pressure became stronger than their clarity. And this gets even more powerful when you are already depleted. Guilt trips rarely arrive when you are calm, rested, and centered. They show up when you are tired, when you are stressed, when you are doubting yourself, when you are emotionally overloaded. That timing matters, because when guilt activates, stress rises with it. Your body reacts before your logic catches up. Your system starts prioritizing emotional resolution over rational judgment. You stop asking, "Is this fair?" and start asking, "How do I make this feeling stop?" That is why guilt trips work on intelligent people. In fact, intelligence often does not protect you at all, because this is not a logic problem. This is an emotional override. The mechanism bypasses analysis and goes straight for identity, attachment, and social pain. And the darkest part is this: the people who are best at guilt tripping are often the people closest to you. Not strangers, not enemies. The people whose disappointment matters most. A parent, a partner, a sibling, a close friend. Because the more emotionally important someone is to you, the more power their pain carries. And sometimes they do not even look aggressive. Sometimes they look wounded, soft, fragile, heartbroken, which makes resistance feel cruel. That is why so many people stay trapped in this cycle for years, because they are not fighting obvious abuse. They are fighting implication, tone, sadness, silence, martyrdom, emotional weight. And that is much harder to name. Not every guilt tripper is fully malicious. Some people learned this pattern early.
They learned that direct requests got ignored.
But visible suffering got results. So instead of saying, "I need help," they learn to say things that make you feel responsible for not helping. That does not make the pattern healthy, and it does not make the impact smaller, because conscious or unconscious, the result is the same. Your emotions get used to control your behavior. The pattern usually follows the same structure. First, they remind you of a sacrifice, a bond, or a debt. Then, they imply you are betraying it. Then, they display hurt without making a direct request. Then, they wait. And if the technique works, you step in and solve the problem for them. That is the genius of it. Because once you volunteer the solution, it no longer feels like they controlled you. It feels like you chose it. But if you pay attention, you start noticing something disturbing. Relief never lasts. The debt never fully clears. The sacrifice is never fully repaid. The standard keeps moving. You give in once and the bar rises. You explain yourself, and the explanation gets ignored. You try to set a boundary, and suddenly the conversation becomes, "So now I'm the bad guy? So I mean nothing to you now? Wow, I didn't know you were this selfish." And just like that, the original issue disappears. Now you are defending your humanity. That is why guilt tripping is so effective. It forces you into a false choice. Either disappoint them or betray yourself. Either look cold or surrender your boundary. Either tolerate their pain or become responsible for ending it. For people who are deeply empathetic, that can feel almost impossible. Because social rejection hurts. Disapproval hurts. Being seen as selfish, even unfairly, hurts. The brain treats that kind of emotional rejection as a real threat. And guilt trippers, consciously or not, lean on that fact. So how do you break it? Not by becoming cold. Not by killing your conscience. Not by turning into someone who stops caring. You break it by slowing the moment down. That is the first move. When you feel that pressure rise in your chest, pause. Do not answer immediately. Do not defend yourself immediately. Do not rush to repair the atmosphere immediately. Pause and ask one question. Did I actually do something wrong, or am I reacting to someone else's display of pain? Those are not the same thing. They feel the same in the body, but they are not the same in reality. Real guilt is usually specific. It points to a real action, a real harm, a real repair. Manipulated guilt is vague. It spreads, it shifts, it grows. And no matter what you give it, it is rarely satisfied for long.
That difference can save you. Because the moment you can name the pattern loses some of its power. And that pause matters more than most people realize. Because that pause is where your agency lives. That pause is where your mind comes back online. That pause is where you remember.
Someone else feeling hurt does not automatically mean you did something wrong.
Read that again in your own life. Because for some people, that sentence changes everything. The most dangerous manipulation is not always loud. It does not always insult you. It does not always threaten you. It does not always look cruel. Sometimes it looks like disappointment. Sometimes it sounds like love. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in sacrifice, sadness, and history. And that is exactly why it works. Because the hardest manipulation to resist is the one that makes you feel like resisting. It makes you a bad person.
If this pattern has ever made you question yourself, You were not weak. You were being psychologically cornered. And once you see that clearly, you stop confusing guilt with truth.